And we're back. You're listening to One Rep at a Time Radio. What's going on, everybody? This is Marv. I'm your host. You are listening to One Rep at a Time Radio, aired exclusively and originally on the Recovery Channel mobile app. Like I said, I'm your host, One Rep at a Time Radio, brought to you by onerepatatime.net. That's right, you spell it out. So it is New Year's. So if getting fit and healthy is one of your New Year's resolution goals, let's do something different this year, right? Let's make this the last time you ever have to get in shape. So visit onerepatatime.net today for a bunch of free information, first and foremost, as well as some very affordable, customizable, and effective services. So check that out. That's right. First show of the new year. Very happy to be here. Hope everybody had a wonderful New Year's. Hope we have a plan of action for this year. And let's start off the show. We always do. We say my own version of the third step prayer. Now, 12-step fellowships are not a requirement for a clean and sober lifestyle. However, because they are part of my story, I do weave those into my story. And so this is my own version of a third step prayer. It was recommended I create my own version when I was in treatment. And it's been very powerful. So I say this at the beginning of every show, so long as it's not a listener Q&A, because those episodes we're trying to cram in as much information as possible. So let's go back to our roots. Let's say this prayer and get this show started. God, take my will in my life. Relieve me of my fear and insecurity and replace it with self-love and acceptance. Instill in me the principle of non-judgment towards myself, ever reminding me to be gentle on myself. Allow me the courage, the drive, and the focus to do today what needs to be done, to walk through what I need to walk through. May life radiate through my eyes, not the clouds of depression. May my actions bear witness to you, fulfilling your expectation, not those of me or others. May I do your will always. Clean, sober, and free. Amen. All right, everybody. So we are going to do an episode. I don't really know what I'm going to call this yet, but the whole principle is doing, well, first of all, my experience with recovery, and the pros and cons of stuff. And then also, we're just going to focus a lot on various diets, mainstream diets. And I'm not going to be calling out like different camps by name. I don't want to get in trouble for slander. But doing the pros and cons of each like category of a popular diet, because yes, it is January. New Year's resolution years are all over the place. A lot of people this year are trying to pick out whatever new fad diet that they are going to follow. So I want to give you the pros and the cons of those diets. But of course, this is a recovery slash fitness internet radio show or podcast, whatever you want to call it. So let's start with recovery first and just kind of go over my whole path of recovery. Now, of course, a legal disclaimer. All the information I give you on diets and just anything about fitness, this is for entertainment and educational purposes only. This is not direct medical advice. So always clear a new diet plan with a doctor prior to starting. But this is our take. And some of our takes on popular like categories of diets are going to be pretty controversial. So I do expect to hear from some people. Some people might be angry, like if they're in the camp, right? We get too caught up in being so dogmatic of my way is the only way, that we miss out on a lot of positives of, other diets out there or other fitness camps or other routes of recovery. Because just like I said earlier, there are many paths at the same top of the hill for recovery. So what works for me in my recovery might not work for you in your recovery. What works for me in my fitness, what works for me in my nutrition, my lifestyle might not work for you. So let's not shun others and put other people down just because they don't choose to follow the same path that we do. I think that is so common in today's society. We all want to belong to a camp, and then we defend it with everything we're worst, and we get so close-minded. We put our blinders on, and even we just miss out on a lot of opportunity, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of potential growth. So, real quick, we're going to start with recovery, right? So, I've been to 3 rehabs. I went to an intensive outpatient at 19 years old. I went to full-blown lockdown unit of a psych ward, followed by a $30,000 rehab, followed by a 3-month cognitive behavioral therapy outpatient program at 25 years old. And at 27 years old, God willing, my last treatment, I went to a county-funded, what's known as an intense short-term behavior modification program. And so I've been to outpatient, expensive, county-funded And guess what? Any of them would. I didn't have to go to all three. Any of them would have worked if I was willing to get honest, willing to do the work, and willing to quit calling the shots. But because I was not willing to do that, the outpatient program didn't work. Because I was not ready to be honest and look at myself and really be harsh on myself as far as accepting responsibility and not just putting up with my own bullshit. Sorry to curse, but it's true. That $30,000 rehab should have worked. The only reason why the behavior modification county funded program worked was because I was done trying to call the shots. So I'm not gonna, all of them are instrumental, right? If I hadn't gone to the outpatient program, if I hadn't gone to the expensive rehab, there's no way in hell I would have stayed at the county funded place that first weekend. No way in hell. It was an eye opener, a shocker. I was very uncomfortable. I'll be honest, I was flat out scared, but it was the greatest thing for me. Graduating from that program meant more for me in my life as far as my relationship with myself, my life success than my college degree. And guess what? My college degree helps me a lot with this endeavor. I have a bachelor's in kinesiology with an emphasis in exercise science. But graduating from that county funded program, which is very hard to do, 500 to 700 people go through that program every year, and maybe 20 to 30 graduate. I made it, and that meant more for my life success than college. So those are this experience with various rehabs, right? I've kind of done them all, and the only reason why the last one took is because I was done. I was finally whipped. I was willing to admit that I'm a drug addict, alcoholic, that left to my own devices, I was going to end up dead or behind bars. And I needed to do something different, and I needed to quit calling the shots. Now, I've also done a couple types of therapy. I went to, before the psych lockdown, the psych ward, I was taking a therapy. I don't know what kind it was. I was taking anger management when I was younger, but I don't remember too much about that. Then I went to a family therapist, but the true full-blown programs I've done is I've done cognitive behavioral therapy and dialectic behavior therapy, DBT. Again, whatever works for you is what is fantastic. DBT worked for me, made a lot more sense to me than cognitive behavioral therapy. However, I am very appreciative of the CBT program I went to because it brought to my attention that I had body dysmorphia, which I didn't know about, body image issues. So that is one of the ways my addiction manifests itself, or my disease of addiction, right? Drugs and alcohol are but a symptom. So, I have body image issues, I have manipulation issues, I have validation issues, female issues, relationship issues, stuff like that. And so the CBT program made me aware of that issue that I was previously unaware of, and I'm very grateful for that. However, DBT just made more sense to me, so I got a little bit more out of that. So again, I went to multiple different types of therapy, and I was just more receptive to one. One clicked with me more, which is why, again, I think that people need to, and this is just my opinion, so if it doesn't apply, let it fly, but I think, if people do have the courage to go to therapy, if they don't like it or they go in with their connotations and their mindset, that they're missing out on a whole opportunity, right? If one route or one branch of therapy doesn't work for you, well, that doesn't mean all therapy is not going to work for you, so keep hunting until you find the one that works. So that's just my opinion on therapy. And of course, like I've said before, 12-step fellowships are a part of my recovery. All I know is that Marv Anonymous did not work. I tried to pick and choose which parts of the program I was going to do, self-sponsor myself, only use only use drugs, not alcohol, and be involved in one fellowship, do the steps in my order, sponsor myself, all that stuff, and it didn't work. So again, there's so many routes of recovery, right? Smart recovery, celebrate recovery, church, religion, therapy, there's the harm reduction guide, stuff like that, which is just, if it works for you, my hat's off for you. I just know I need a life free of every substance that's mind altering. And again, we all need to be inclusive, right? We all have our own definitions of what we think abstinence is and recovery is, and the distinction I make between that is being abstinent is meaning I am not drinking and drugging, period. Being in recovery means I am finding out the reasons why I needed to drink and drug, and I am finding new solutions to replace my solution of drinking and drugging. So hopefully that makes sense, right? Abstinence, I'm merely not drinking and drugging, or my other behaviors, right? Because Addiction is not just drugs and alcohol. And when I'm in recovery, I'm finding out the reasons why I needed to do those behaviors and fixing them and finding new ways to make myself feel better about myself. So that's my distinction from that. But again, let's not get, let's just be real, right? When it comes to online recovery, it's typically yay 12-step fellowship or boo 12-step fellowship. Why not just be inclusive, right? What works for you? My hat's off to you. Let's all celebrate the fact that we are all bona fide badasses for having overcome addiction and to whatever it is and are living a new way to live, right? It is a miracle that we are all alive to this day, let alone living hopefully happy, joyous, and free. It's not guaranteed, but we have a fighting chance of living a life we could be proud of because we're not an active addiction. So instead of getting so caught up into what route you're taking for recovery, let's just, celebrate each other in the fact that we're all sober or clean or whatever, I don't really know what the terms they use for the other types of addictions, but you get what I'm saying? Like, let's not get so dogmatic in these camps where we're almost, I know it's exaggerating, but like at war with each other, of why your way's better or why this way sucks or why I don't need this anymore. Let's just be grateful for where we are in this life. Let's be grateful that hopefully you woke up hangover free, or you woke up period on January 1st. You didn't come to and you didn't have a hangover. You knew exactly where you were. Even if you woke up and that wasn't the case, you know what? I just want to tell you right now, I love you. It is possible, right? If nobody tells you they love you today, let me say I do. And it is worth it. If I could overcome what I overcame, you can. There's nothing special about me. I just get really vulnerable to try and share a message of experience, strength, and hope that it is possible to overcome addiction, that you never have to use or drink or do whatever your addiction is ever again, even if you want to, that there is a better way to live. And if I can do it, you can do it. So that's my little spiel on different routes of recovery, my experience, and let's all just celebrate each other, praise each other, and, recognize that there's going to be many paths at the same top of the hill, so don't put down another path that's just because it's different than yours. You're missing out on potential friendships, potential insight from this person, learning from this person, growing from having someone in your life, so that's what we need to focus on, folks, and that's my bit on recovery. So, for those of you just tuning in on the Recovery Channel mobile app, you listen to One Rep at a Time Radio, brought to you by onerepatatime.net. We're going to dive now into various, I guess we'll call them categories of mainstream diets, because it is New Year's time. So, yes, this is a recovery and fitness / health show, and now we're going to dive into the fitness and health side of that show. We just covered recovery. So if you tune this on and you hear a guy talking about a bunch of nutrition, you're in the right place. Okay, this is One Rep at a Time Radio. We air on Thursdays. So let's dive into it. So first and foremost, I hate the phrase the term diet, because by definition at some point you're going to be off of your diet. So I prefer to use the term nutrition plan or nutrition strategy or just nutrition. Let's just break it then down. Really, this is our One Rep at a Time's $1 million statement. 2 sentences to sum up nutrition. Almost optimally. I don't want to use the word perfect, but I've challenged somebody to give me a better definition of nutrition. It sums everything up more clear than this. The quantity of your food will determine the number on the weight scale. Period. End of story. I don't care if you're eating 2,000 calories of salmon and broccoli or 2,000 calories of Krispy Kreme donuts. The weight scale is going to be the same. However, the quality of your food and the quality of your training will determine both how you look and feel, so body composition and overall health. So, you could have people eating the same quality of food, right? There's 2 people, they eat the same 2,000 calories of salmon and broccoli. We're just stick with that example. I think I'm going to dive in later as to why it's only eating salmon and broccoli is not a way to eat. But if 2 people are eating the same 2,000 calories of salmon and broccoli, they have the same metabolism, everything's the same, except one person resistance trains 3 times a week, the other person doesn't do any sort of activity. The person who resistance trains is going to have better body composition and also going to be healthier, for lack of a better word, right? Their their blood levels are going to be better. In theory, their cholesterol should be better. The insulin sensitivity should be better. Their hormones should be better. Their metabolism is going to be quicker from the weight training. So the quality of the food matters, right? Quantity is just going to determine the number on the weight scale. They've done multiple studies. Same diets, same caloric. So same amount of calories when diets. One person's on a lot, eating 60-70% of the calories from sugar. The other person's eating 5 to 6% of their calories from sugar, and protein is the same. They lose the same amount of weight. Okay, so quantity is how you lose weight. To lose weight, you have to eat less calories than you are burning. To gain weight, you need to eat more calories than you are burning. To be in a maintenance phase where you're just maintaining your weight, you need to eat the same amount of calories you are burning. Okay, now there's no way around it. It's called the law of thermodynamics. But quality does matter. Quality will determine how you look and how you feel, and a lot of times we kind of neglect that. But just there is no magic foods, there is no magic food combinations, there is no fat burning foods, there is no magic diet. Everything works around the fact that in order to lose weight, you have to be in a caloric deficit. So once again, to lose weight and your New Year's resolution goal, you need to find a diet plan that gives you guidelines for quantity. Okay, how to calculate how many calories you were eating, so you could track that and compare it to the weight on the scale, or your progress, your body fat, your pictures, whatever you're going to use to measure it by, so you can make sure that you are in the correct caloric deficit. Okay, so quality matters absolutely, and quantity matters. Quantity matters even more. It's like 1A and 1B. Okay, but if anything else, there are no magical foods. There is no magical diet. It's all about being a caloric deficit. If you want to lose weight and if you want to gain weight, then flip those on its head, right? You need to eat more calories than you are consuming. Than you are burning, and you need to be resistance training. So that's how you could break down Diet Nutrition 101. Okay, so now let's go into categories. So the first one we're going to tackle is the ketogenic diet, or a low carb diet. Now, honestly, if you're going to go low carb, then for a prolonged period of time, you might as well go ketogenic. So what the hell is a ketogenic diet? A ketogenic diet means that you are pretty much shunning carbohydrates and are now using fat as a fuel source. Okay, so this has become all the craze and rave again, right? These diets recycle, folks. Every, I don't know, is it 10 to 20 years, 10 to 15 years, whatever it is. Fitness fads and diet fads recycle over and over again. They gain a lot of popularity. They get really popular, then they fade away, and then they come back again with a vengeance. So ketogenic eating is your body is a hybrid car. We've talked about this in the past. You can either use carbohydrates and glucose for your fuel, for energy, or you could use fat, which becomes ketones for fuel. So let's just go, I don't want to go too much into the science of it, but that's what a ketogenic diet is, or an ultra low carb diet, like just eating only salmon and broccoli. If you're doing that, you might as well eat a ketogenic diet, which means you're eating fat, so as your fuel source. So let's go just into the pros and cons of each, and then the whole idea of this show is to give you the pros and cons of each diet category, so you can make an educated, informed decision. And some of this stuff is not very popular. Some of this is going to go in the face of what's being preached in mainstream media. So I might get some blowback on this, but I am doing this so you could learn. Okay, so let's go over the positives of a ketogenic diet. It definitely is great for the diabetic crowd because it helps. By taking out carbohydrates, it definitely improves blood sugar, and it helps control your blood sugar levels. Okay, we've put pre-diabetic and diabetic clients of 1 rep at a time on a ketogenic diet. So that is a positive. Another positive, it may improve cholesterol values. It's always improved cholesterol values when I've done it and when other clients have done it. Okay, for the most of the population, a ketogenic diet will improve your cholesterol values. A ketogenic diet will improve your cognitive function. So this is really big with computer programmers in the Silicon Valley, is a ketogenic diet in combination with fasting. Because you are no longer riding a wave of insulin using carbohydrates as a fuel source, your blood sugar is extremely stable, so you don't have that crash and burn. Mentally, cognitively, you're pretty steady throughout the day. You don't have a sugar crash. You don't get bouts of hunger. Okay, so with that said, the ketogenic diet Definitely helps with feelings of satiety, means you just feel fuller throughout the day, right? You could actually, when you're in full ketosis, and it takes several weeks, honestly, it takes several months to fully adapt, right? Because your body has been taught to run on carbohydrates, but it is a hybrid carb. It can be taught to run on fats. Once you make that switch, you're into ketosis, right? You've keto adapted. You can forget to eat, because guess what? Your body can turn to fat for fuel source. Now, ketogenic diets, people think they're magical from weight loss, because people go to a keto diet and after about 3 to 5 days, they lose anywhere from, 4 to 10 pounds, maybe 15 pounds in extreme cases. So they think it's this magical thing for weight loss. What is happening is, because you're no longer eating carbohydrates, you are losing a bunch of water weight. So for every gram or molecule or whatever you want, whatever unit you want to use, for every 1 unit of carbohydrate, your body absorbs 3 units of water. Hence the name carbohydrate. Water's in the name. So when you quit eating carbohydrates, what's known as stored carbohydrate stores in your muscles, known as glycogen, you lose that, and you burn through that all, and then you lose all that water weight. So people think it's magical. All you're doing is losing water. Okay. Now, another positive of ketogenic diets, it is potentially anti-cancer. So we've used this with my girlfriend, my best friend, and she's a cancer survivor. Okay, so possibly they're still doing more research on it, but it looks pretty promising. Now let's learn to the negatives of the ketogenic diet, because it's preached like this is this great thing. You can go in and out of ketosis, no problem, and it's just phenomenal. Okay, so some negatives of ketogenic eating. First of all, because you're not eating carbohydrates, your cortisol levels are going to increase. Cortisol is a stress hormone. It is catabolic. Now, I was just talking about this honestly with a client this morning, that cortisol is not the devil that we make it out to be. In fact, you want very high levels of cortisol in the morning and low levels of cortisol at night. However, your cortisol levels can start to spike the longer you go without carbohydrates. So that could be a negative. Now, the biggest problem I have with ketogenic eating is, once you decide to go off of keto, everybody reacts differently, but people can have a hell of a time bringing carbohydrates back into their diet, especially women. We talked about with the Q&A episode a couple weeks ago, there's nothing wrong with the fact that there are some significant physiological, whatever you want to call it, differences between men and women. It is what it is, so we don't need to get up in arms about it. It is what it is. Men have much more resilient hormone systems and metabolisms compared to women. That's not a bad thing, because back in the day, women adapt much quicker to a lack of food, and they burn body fat differently than men, because back in the day when there was a famine, we needed women to survive, to continue to bear children, and we needed men to die off so mankind could keep going. Not only that, our bodies only care about survival. Not only do our bodies only care about survival of women, they also want to be able to bear children. So there's just differences between men and women. It is what it is. We don't need to get in, it is what it is, okay? So women can have a really hard time bringing carbohydrates back into their diet. So thinking that you could go on keto for 2 to 4 weeks, like it's publicized in bodybuilding, muscle comics, fitness, whatever you want to call it, is really a misconception. And that constant flipping back and forth between trying to run on fat and running on carbohydrates, you're confusing the hell out of your body. You're probably doing more harm than good. So if you go ketogenic eating, you better believe that this is going to be a long-term switch. Do not go in and out constantly switching. Some people, like I said, may improve cholesterol levels. Well, some people, it is not for them. Their blood levels will get out of whack. Their cholesterol goes to hell. And it's just a bad situation. So some people do not react well to keto. Personally, I react great to keto. I did it for probably 8 months this year as moral support for my girlfriend. I went great. In fact, I even did it on a bulk to gain muscle, to show folks that, guess what, the quantity of your food matters. Because people are like, how can you build muscle if you're not eating carbohydrates? Oh, you absolutely can. Okay, so I did it for 8 months. It took me about 4 weeks before I really felt like I was able to process carbohydrates again and got going from there. But some people, have a hard time bringing carbohydrates back in. Some people react really badly with it. My blood levels are always good. I've written about on onerepatatime.net, but my cortisol levels definitely come up. And because you're not eating carbohydrates, the rate of conversion, this is getting really scientific, but the rate of conversion from T4 to T3, right? T3 is the active thyroid hormone, will naturally decrease because of the lack of carbohydrates. So you need to have what are known as strategic refeeds in your carbohydrate eating. Now, the biggest things I see that most people have, now that's like super advanced, technical, scientific. The biggest things I see people failing on are not drinking enough water, because guess what? You're not eating the carbohydrate. Your body's not holding water like it used to. So people have hydration issues and people miss fiber. Okay? Just because you're going ketogenic doesn't mean you need to shun everything that is green, leafy, and fibrous. In fact, you should still be eating vegetables with every meal. It's just different types of veggies. So a lot of spinach, broccoli, zucchini. Things you want to avoid are carrots, popcorn, corn. So popcorn, corn, carrots, and beans. Other than that, continue to eat vegetables. So the biggest fallacy I see with people going ketogenic eating is they ignore the fiber aspect of their diet. They're missing out on a bunch of nutrients. All they're eating is a bunch of cheese and fats and ranch and meat, and they're missing out on fiber and vegetables. So do not neglect fiber and vegetables while you're doing a ketogenic eating strategy. Next up is paleo. So paleo is the whole eat like our ancestors eat. So no starchy carbohydrates, no processed stuff. Essentially, fruit, some veggies, nuts, seeds, and meat. And then they eat a lot of butter. It's really popular with them because our ancestors had access to butter, right? Or coconut oil is really popular then. But anyways, that's what paleo is. So look up more information on that because we have a lot of info to cover. So positives of paleo. Paleo was one of the first diets, for lack of a better word, that actually put a big emphasis on the quality of your food. So that is a huge plus of paleo. You're not eating, by definition, you're not eating processed foods. You're not eating prepackaged foods. You're not eating a bunch of sodium. You're eating whole foods that you're preparing yourself. So that is a phenomenal advantage. Also, paleo eating is a great eating plan for people with autoimmune disorders. And the guys who made it really popular, Rob Wolf, I believe, he even states that paleo eating is great for autoimmune disorders. Okay. So paleo, love the fact that it emphasizes quality for the first time ever. Prepare your own meals. Don't eat processed crap. Great. Now, the negatives of paleo. I'm going to brush over this, but paleo is not suitable for high-end athletes or just athletes based on the activity you're doing because you're not eating enough starchy carbohydrates, so your body's not storing enough glycogen because fruit does not get stored in your muscles. It gets stored in your liver. So that's an issue. Now, here's the biggest issue. Well, there's two issues. So here's another. I'm going to go to another very scientific issue, and then I'm going to go with the biggest fallacy that I see in it. Because you're not eating dairy or gluten on a paleo diet, if you cut those things out of your diet for an extended period of time, you could permanently lose the enzymes responsible for processing dairy and gluten. Okay, those are what are known as non-resilient enzymes. Jason Phillips, who is this fit, nutritious CrossFit guru guy, he's big on bringing that to light. You know, especially again, once for women. Women can lose those enzymes a little bit quicker than men. So if you cut dairy out of your diet, you know, you've eaten dairy your whole life, you decide to go paleo for a year or 2 years, and you try to bring it back in, all of a sudden you're gassy, bloated, you're on the toilet, you might be that way for the rest of your life. You might have given yourself a lactose intolerance. So those enzymes are not guaranteed to bounce back. So if you're taking something out of your diet long term or for a period of time, it could potentially be for the rest of your life if you're making a dietary change as drastic as that. So be wary of that. And the biggest fallacy with paleo is that it does not give you quantity, right? On paper, it doesn't teach you about quantity. It emphasizes quality. So if you can do quantity emphasized with paleo, fantastic. I love it. And paleo is tied to the CrossFit world. Just FYI, every person at the CrossFit Games does not do a paleo diet. That it got in bed with CrossFit a long time ago. It's actually not a good diet at all. Jason Phillips, he's a CrossFit nutrition guru, hates paleo for CrossFit. That guy is smarter than even I am. So if some of the world leaders for that are saying that, and the best athletes in the world of CrossFit don't follow a paleo diet, you shouldn't either. That goes back to that first negative point. But again, paleo, great emphasis on food quality, great for people with autoimmune disorders, great job at eliminating processed foods. It can, however, be bad for athletes. It can, however, give you potential issues with reintroducing dairy or gluten down the line, and it doesn't teach you about quantity. Okay. Now the next diet camp category is the if it fits your macros crowd. IIFYM. What that is it's saying a calorie is a calorie so long as you eat a certain ratio of certain amount of carbs every day, certain amount of protein every day, certain amount of fats every day. It doesn't matter what those food sources are, you are going to look the same. Now here are the positives. If it fit your macros, first of all, taught everybody about what the hell a macro is. Before If It Fit Your Macros came onto the scene, Dr. Lane Norton was really big on to bringing it into the play. He learned it from somebody else, but that guy's name escapes me at the time. Taught everybody what macros. So macros are protein, fats, and carbs. They taught everybody that there's 4 calories per gram of protein and carbohydrates, and there is 9 calories per gram of fats. Just FYI, there is 7 calories per gram of alcohol and 7 calories per gram of ketones. So just FYI, food for thought. So taught about macros. It got put an emphasis on quantity, right? The emphasis is on quantity. It actually got people tracking their food using a weight scale. That's a huge plus. It also helps you avoid eating the same foods over and over again, right? Because, back in the day you got a diet plan. It was the same, boiled chicken, rice, and veggies, 5 days a week. The other meal is going to be 3 asparagus spears and a tilapia loin 3 days a week. If you eat the same things over and over again, you got sick of it, right? You got palate fatigue. Your body, I did that so often when I was in my early 20s, believing muscle comics and muscle and fiction. To this day, even though it's a delicious meal, I cannot get down a single bite of baked chicken, quinoa, and veggies. I put that in my mouth and I literally have a physical gag reflex because I eat that over and over again, anywhere from 2 to 4 times per day, every day for a good 3 years. So it avoids eating these food things over and over again. And also, I like it. It's kind of a twist, but it kind of goes against the moral categorization of food. So you listen to One Rep at a Time radio on the Recovery Channel mobile app. Yes, this is a recovery, fitness, and health show. So right now we're diving really deep into diet since it is the first week of January. Trying to give you some education onto the various diet camps out there. But at One Rep at a Time, right, we're talking about let's change the phrase of clean eating and junk food to smart. It needs to be smarter. Well, If It Fits Your Macros really broke against the whole moral categorization, the strict categorization of food as clean or junk, right? So I'm a huge fan of that, okay? Now, negatives. People totally misinterpret it, what it's all about, and try to fit in as much junk food as they can. You want an example? Go to Instagram, type in the hashtag IIFYM, and look at all the crap there's on there. All of a sudden, Pop-Tarts and donuts and ice cream got really big, right? The original concept of If It Fit Your Macros is, hey, for this meal, if I want to eat green beans instead of broccoli, is it okay? For this meal, if I want to eat a sweet potato instead of rice, is it okay? If this meal I want to eat a chicken breast instead of salmon, is it okay? That was the original concept behind If It Fits Your Macros. But all of a sudden, people started to use it as a way to try and eat all this junk food yet still be quote-unquote shredded, right? You go to Instagram, all these pictures are a bunch of junk food and a bunch of people with these insane, incredible physiques. So that is a big-time negative. You could develop a terrible relationship with food, okay? Not only with food, of trying to fit in junk food and having a negative repercussion, right? Also, people could go off the other end when they can't track their food, for instance. They could lead to binging episodes. So I admit, I track my food, but I follow a different methodology than If It Fits Your Macros, right? We emphasize quality, and we don't give you a ratio of protein, fats, and carbs. We give you a ratio of 3 other things that are way easier to follow. So it's way more flexible. I call it flexible eating, but yeah, there's a bunch of people selling ebooks, making a bunch of money off of it, flexible eating, which I think is another name for If It Fits Your Macros anyway, so I guess it's called very, very flexible eating. I don't know. We have our own approach to it. That's not nearly as constrictive as the traditional If It Fits Your Macros approach. But anyways, I track my food, and I know if I don't track my food, I do have to fight the impulse of, well, I'm not tracking today, so screw it, I'm going to eat a lot, right? So it can lead to binging episodes and a negative relationship with food in general. So that is a potential pitfall. And the biggest problem with If It Fits Your Macros is quality is often ignored, and even people try to prove that they could eat candy, they could eat fast food, they could eat junk food and still look good, because when quality is not taken into account, your health is not taken into account. Body composition does not tell you what you look like on the inside, okay? You could have the greatest body composition in the world, you could have terrible cholesterol, you could have terrible insulin resistance, you could have kidney issues, you could have heart issues, you could have plaque buildup. I mean, you could be a disaster inside and look phenomenal on the outside. So quality is the biggest problem with the If It Fits Your Macros approach. It meant really well. I think it's done a lot of good, but people, as always, like we've talked about in a video we released on YouTube earlier this week, we take something and run to the extreme and just take it out of context, right? And try to push it to the extreme and misconstrue what it was originally intended for. So that's my biggest problem with If It Fits Your Macros. But again, it was really the first thing to really bring into the forefront quantity matters, okay? So just be careful with that. And guess what? You don't have to track and weigh your food for the rest of your life. I do believe that is absolutely necessary, like we talked about earlier in the show. If you don't know how many calories you are eating, how do you know how much of a caloric deficit you're in order to lose weight? And I'm just assuming when people are looking into diets, they're doing it to lose weight. And like we've always said on here, you should take that a step further and say, I want to lose body fat while maintaining muscle, if not building muscle, depending on where you're at in your fitness journey. So you have to eat less food than what you are burning to lose weight. So for a period of time, you are going to have to track. Period. End of story. It is a teaching tool. It's not forever. It's just so you can learn the portion size, get an idea of where your metabolism is currently at, right? Because my maintenance calories at my weight, my body fat, how much I work out, my diet history, how oftentimes have I gone on diets, how oftentimes I've gone on binging episodes, is going to be totally different than somebody who is the same weight as me, right? My maintenance calories most likely are going to be a lot higher than most people's. My bulking calories are going to be a lot higher than most people's, okay? I was having to eat 6,000 calories per day just 2 months ago in order to see a 2-pound increase in a 1 month period. Okay, most people are not there. So everybody's metabolism is different. Everybody's caloric requirements are different. I hope that makes sense. I kind of got off on a tangent. So let's bring it back where we need to be. So next, the one specific diet I will go over is the Whole30. It's because we had a bunch of clients do that when we first started, 1 rep at a time. We could also classify elimination diets in there. So again, Whole30, emphasis on quality, really is helpful for determining intolerances, especially with elimination diets. And again, it avoids prepackaged and processed foods, and it emphasizes the fact that you need to prepare the food meals yourself. I'm talking specifically for Whole30. I love that. But once again, just like with Paleo, you take dairy out for an extended period of time, you're not guaranteed to get those enzymes back. You might be out of luck with eating dairy for the rest of your life, and there is no quantity control. Absolutely no quantity control in the Whole30. And elimination diets are good if you use them short term, okay? So the Whole30, after a month, they can allow you to reintroduce common foods one at a time to see if you have any intolerance. So that's why I plug them in together. But just be wary that if you take dairy or gluten out for a long period of time, you're not guaranteed to get those enzymes back, and there's no quantity control. A cool factoid, though, is the founder of the Whole30 is in recovery herself. She has this badass phrase, I hope I get it right: quitting heroin is hard, drinking your coffee black is not. I'm pretty sure that's verbatim, or I'm close. I got the gist of it. So that's a cool little thing that she's in recovery. She came up with this. I do like the fact that there's emphasis on quality, emphasis on no prepackaged foods. You got to prepare the food yourself, but there is no thing about quantity, and you could be setting yourself up for a life of no dairy, no gluten, because those are what are classified as non-resilient enzymes. You might not get those back. All right, next up we're just going to classify them as meal replacement shakes and bars. I am not going to call any specific companies out, but let's just say people have approached me to work for various home fitness programs quite a bit, and they sell meal replacement bars and shakes, and based on a moral disagreement with that company and their approach, I have turned it down repeatedly. But that's just one specific example, but there are a lot of meal replacement shakes and bars out there and diet plans. So what's the positive? Inherently, because you're replacing whole meals with shakes and they're lower calories or bars, you're going to increase your amount of calories consumed, which puts you in a deficit, so you are going to lose weight. The negatives. There's always, well, first of all, there's no education whatsoever, so people think these shakes or these bars are magical. No, if you are replacing whole meals with 2 shakes a day or 2 bars a day, and you only eat 1 real meal a day, you are going to be in a you're eating way less food than you were before. Okay, so once you get off of those shakes, there is definitely a rebound effect because you didn't learn anything. So you just knew you're eating way less calories than before. So there's a rebound effect. And oftentimes these shakes and bars are overpriced, overhyped. You know, people think they're magic. No, they're just putting you in an extreme caloric deficit, which can slow your metabolism down if you do it for an extended period of time. And there's no, like, I guess you could say there's no quality and no quantity controls, because some of these shakes and bars are just garbage. They're a bunch of man-made scientific nonsense. They could be missing micronutrients, missing fiber, and no quantity control as far as, like, they're not teaching you how to properly eat in a caloric deficit without relying on those shakes and bars. So I'm really against them unless you are, like, morbidly obese and you are going to die if you don't lose weight. Then yes, shakes, all liquid diet, meal replacement bars, you're going to have to do that. But for the average person, not a fan whatsoever. And again, that's going to go against what a lot of people do, but that's just my take on it. I have a lot of good friends who do that thing. I love them as individuals, but I really disagree with that approach. But anyways, yeah, let's move on because I don't want to just be, blah. So, let's see. Well, this vegan vegetarian diet, look, all I'm going to say is make sure you have like a sound reasoning behind it. If you have a moral disagreement with eating animals or how they're slaughtered or whatever, I am 100% good with that, okay? But just don't fall for like the propaganda hype of like that movie What the Health, which was basically vegan propaganda. In my opinion, that's all I'm going to say on that. Like, make sure you have a sound reasoning behind it. Obviously, with vegan vegetarian diet, you're going to have to be very strategic in the foods you're eating together to get complete protein sources. Being low on protein, they are notorious for. Even if you take protein, vegan or vegetarian protein, those protein powders are really low on the amino acid leucine. And leucine is the amino acid that spikes muscle protein synthesis. So, it is what it is. But I'm not like totally against them. Like, guess what? Like I've alluded to, 1 rep at a time has its own nutrition take. We call it the 1 rep at a time nutrition hierarchy. And we just even did a video on it. Low protein days are a part of our nutrition hierarchy and our nutrition approach of doing an ultra low protein day where you eat essentially vegetarian, not vegan, but definitely like vegetarian for a day, anywhere from 2 to 4 days a month. And that can actually improve health, improve muscle building, improve your sensitivity to protein. So we're not against a vegan or vegetarian take on it. It's just make sure that you have a sound reasoning behind it. You're not falling for these scare tactics that are used so often. So there's that. Moving on. Carb cycling is just like more of a strategy. But carb cycling means you have your high carb days, your medium carb days, your low carb days. It's really popular in the aesthetic world, the physique world. And if you're doing it properly, you're not replacing all those. So by doing that, you're gonna what's known as undulating your calories. So your high carbohydrate days, you have more calories than your low carbohydrate days. So you can replace a little bit of the carbohydrates on your low carb days with fats, but you don't want to replace them so many fats that you erase that difference in calories, right? So how carb cycling works is because undulating your calories, so high calorie days, medium calorie days, low calories, you prevent your metabolism from slowing down, you keep hormones revving along, you keep your metabolism from slowing down and adapting. So I'm a big fan of carb cycling, big fan. Now, but most people don't understand, so bear with me, folks, this is going to get really scientific. There is a difference to carb cycling when you're doing it for aesthetics and performance. So it takes, this is scientific, so bear with me. People will go like, I'm working out in an hour. I'm gonna eat some carbohydrates, right? I'm a big fan of eating an apple or apple, oatmeal, or sweet potatoes about an hour before I work out. But I'm not eating that apple, oatmeal, or sweet potato to be the carbohydrate fuel for my workout. I'm eating that to keep my blood sugar level stable. It takes about 24 to 36 hours after you've eaten carbohydrates for it to really load your stored carbohydrate stores, known as glycogen that we talked about, in your muscles. Okay, so if you're doing carb cycling, which I am a huge fan of, and we're going to talk about it why next, I want to make sure I get this right. So for performance, you're doing carb cycling for performance. Your high carb day is not the day of the performance, it's the day before the performance. So you eat your high carbohydrate day the day before your event. So the day before your football game, let's call it your CrossFit meet, your marathon, your triathlon, whatever it is. You do where you need to be at your best performance, or you're a power lifter, right? You do your high carbohydrate day the day before, your low carbohydrate day the day of the performance. Okay. For aesthetics, it's the opposite. You do your low carbohydrate day the day when you're doing your least amount of activity, and your high carbohydrate day the day you're doing your most activity. So there's a big difference between performance and aesthetics for carb cycling. I hope that makes sense. I know I went really scientific. Now, carb cycling, let's do the positive, right? Like I talked about, the caloric undulation, the varying of calories on a daily basis, keeps your metabolism going, stimulates your metabolism, keeps your hunger levels at bay. Another huge thing with carb cycling is it maintains your insulin sensitivity. So you need a ton of carbohydrates. Your body can start to get insensitive to processing carbohydrates, okay? So that is the biggest plus of carb cycling. I love carb cycling. However, it is very advanced for the general population. Let's worry about getting your calories in order first. Let's worry about making sure you're understanding how much protein you need to eat, how much fiber you need to eat, how many vegetables you need to eat. Cycling is part of the 1 rep at a time nutrition hierarchy, but it is down on the list. It is not near the top, right? The 3 most important things is calories number 1, protein number 2, fiber number 3. That is our opinion. Water's up there with calories. Okay, so that is the positive carb cycle. Now the negatives, yes, like I just said, it can be complicated. Figuring out when do I have my hard carb days, what do I eat on my low carb days, so it can be a little complicated. It can lead to the demonization of carbs, and in carb cycling has this mystique in the fitness physique world of guys don't know any better. It's not magical because carbs are bad. It just inherently helps with calories and keeping you in a deficit during the week. Okay, so there's nothing magical about carb cycling. It's still calories in, calories out, but it does help maintain your insulin sensitivity, which can mean to keep your body building muscle instead of building fat. And it manipulates your water so you don't get watery, you lose water, you deplete, you eat a bunch of carbohydrates, you look amazing, your pumps are great. So, and then there's no quality control with carb cycling, which is a strategy more than a diet plan. But if you're starting to read online about carbohydrates and carb cycling, that's just how it works. That's our take on it. We're going to move on. So you're listening to 1 Rep at a Time radio on the Recovery Channel mobile app. This show is brought to you by onerepatatime.net. I am the founder. My name is Marv. Check us out, right? It's that time of year. Everybody has a resolution. So, and yes, you are listening to a recovery and fitness /health /nutrition show. So we covered recovery in the beginning. You do not have to be in recovery to gain benefit from us. But if you just tune in on the Recovery Channel mobile app and you're freaking out, why the hell is this guy talking food and not sobriety? That is why. We already covered that. We're going to food. The last major camp I want to go to, then I have a couple jotted down. Intermittent fasting. So intermittent fasting is all the rage right now. I love intermittent fasting, but let's go over the positives and the negatives. Positives. Definitely helps with insulin sensitivity. Okay, there are there is a ton of health benefits to fasting. Okay, helps with gut health. It helps with inflammation. It helps after about 12 hours of fasting. Old cells will die off and new cells are regenerated. So now I got to word this very carefully. Old cells may potentially have damaged DNA. That potentially damaged DNA may turn into cancer. So I'm not saying it's anti-cancer, but old cells are susceptible to damaged DNA being replicated and eventually mutating into cancer. That's a simplified explanation, and I'm not saying intermittent fasting will stop cancer, but it does help with the old cellular death. It helps with bloating, it helps with digestive issues, the whole 9 yards, okay? And it also, what I really like about intermittent fasting is when if you know what you're doing, you may have to, this is more for physique, like bodybuilding show, getting ready for a photo shoot, blah, 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 or just somebody who's transitioning to eating lower calories, right? If you're used to eating 5,000 calories and now you need to eat 3,000 calories a day, intermittent fasting can make those 3,000 calories seem like a lot more and go a lot farther, right? So I like to fast when I'm doing low calorie days because it makes my meals seem bigger. So intermittent fasting can be anywhere from, there's all sorts of approaches. Fast for 12 hours, fast for 16 hours, 18 hours, 20 hours. You can do prolonged fast. We're talking about intermittent fasting. So those are the positives of that. Now, what are the negatives? Fasting is stressful on the body. It literally activates our fight or flight response. Okay. Now that is especially hard on women. Okay. If women intermittent fast or do prolonged fast too frequently, there's going to be some physical hormonal potential complications. You could literally lose your period, your menstrual cycle, from fasting too often because your body doesn't know you're intermittent fasting in an attempt to look great or get the health benefits. It just perceives there's a lack of food, a famine, so it wants to keep you survival. So to keep you survival, the menstrual cycle does take a lot of energy, so it's going to shut that down. So it is stressful. It does raise cortisol. Now again, cortisol is not this negative thing. Cortisol, it helps with the burning of body fat, but it is a stress hormone and it can spike those. Now, the biggest problem I have with intermittent fasting, besides that, is it is a potential pitfall for eating disorders. If somebody had an eating disorder in their past, intermittent fasting again can bring that back and make it very susceptible. And remember, recovery, not just drugs and alcohol, it could be eating disorder. I personally never had an eating disorder. However, I had a body image disorder, straight up muscle dysmorphia. So definitely sensitive and sympathetic to that. And if you do intermittent fasting all the time, it loses its effectiveness, right? Remember, our bodies are adaptation machines. Our bodies simply hate to change. If you give it the same stimulus, which would be fasting for 20 hours every single day, 7 days a week, eventually that initial perceived feelings of great and weight loss or whatever it's going to be, your body's going to adapt and it's going to go away. So So when we have clients do this, or just recommend people don't intermittent fast every day. You get intermittent fast up to 3, 4, 5, 3 days a week, I think is the most. So you get some benefits from it. Prolonged fast, you need to clear by your doctor. By prolonged fast, I mean 24 hours or greater. I actually did a prolonged fast last week. I fasted for 25 hours from all food, and I did a 36-hour fast from protein, meaning after the 25 hours, I only ate some nuts and some vegetables. But if you do something all the time, your body's going to adapt. The word intermittent is there for a reason. I don't want you to fast every day, so don't follow. And there's a lot of argument that people are using fasting, right? It's come back in favor, and so they're saying that it's very anabolic, that it builds muscle. There's literally a fasting protocol known as the Lean Gains protocol, where you fast for 16 hours, eat for 8. There's a lot of argument about, is it the best for muscle building? Is it best for fat loss? I wouldn't advocate doing 365 days a year. For 99% of the population, it is fine, but for world-class people trying to build as much muscle as possible, I don't think it is the best optimal for that, for lack of a better word. And intermittent fasting, you should be doing it for the health benefits, the mental benefits. After you've gotten into a fast for a while, it is stronger than any cup of coffee you've ever had. Intermittent fasting works really well with a ketogenic diet. If you're determined to do the ketogenic diet long term, it is better than any cup of coffee you've ever had. The mental acuity, the verbal fluency is amazing. Plus, it also teaches you what real hunger feels like. Because you have those emotional triggers, or oh my goodness, it's noon, it's lunchtime, I have to eat, right? It kind of breaks us of this, right? This whole idea of breakfast, lunch, and dinner was created by the damn food industry. That's why we have breakfast foods, special lunch foods, special dinner foods. We did not evolve eating 3 meals at the same time every day. Different meal for meal A, different meal for meal B, different meal for meal C. It's just some brilliant marketing on their part. I know I'm sounding a little, what's the word? Conspiracy theorist right now, but that's just my opinion. So, and use intermittent fasting for the health benefits, not for as a tool to use weight loss. Now, if you are morbidly obese or you do have really bad blood sugar diabetic problems, again, we're using that for health problems, but to use intermittent fasting as a way solely to lose body fat, I think you're setting yourself up to become so entrenched as the only way I can lose body fat is if I intermittent fast, or potentially bring on an eating disorder by pushing that fast longer and longer and longer. I just think it could be a potential pitfall. Let's see what else. What's somehow, I don't know how, the all meat diet is an actual diet that people are following. The idea is there literally are Eskimos up north who all they eat is meat. So that's where people got the idea. So people are eating ground sirloin and only ground sirloin. Well, the all meat diet works if you eat the blubber, if you eat the organ meat. They're eating the whole damn animal up north, okay, in the Arctic Circle. They're not eating ground sirloin that you get at a grocery store. So please don't be doing that, okay? Unless you're committed to eating blubber and organ meat, stop it. And then, I mean, it's been put to rest with the ultra low fat diet, right? Avoid fat at all costs. That is terrible as well. So I did an experiment for our Instagram page. I can't remember. 8 days, 9 days, 10 days of ultra low fat. And by that time, by the end of that period, I could not handle sunlight. Oh my goodness. Any sunlight killed my head. Bad headache, hurt my eyes. It was terrible. So the ultra low fat diet's been kind of put to rest, right? But just so don't follow that. Please don't go back on that thing. You need fat. You need fat. You need fat. You need fat. And I think that's all I'm going to go into this week. So I hope this helps, right? It was a ton of nutrition info. Some of what I just said, probably pretty controversial. It is my take on it, one rep at a time's take on it. And I hope you found that very helpful. So, yes, it is first week of January. Let's think about this. So I'm going to wrap up the show. What if you were committed to working out and eating smart for the next 6 months? Okay, if you use the statistics for the average life expectancy in the U.S., that is less than 0.5% of that life expectancy. You were not willing to give your all for less than 0.5% of your life expectancy to try to change the quality of your life, to change the course of your life, similar to if you are in recovery. Now, not everybody who's listening to this show is in recovery, but oh my goodness, like, why would you not do that? It blows my mind. I get it. You know, it's not easy. I have job security for a reason, being a trainer, but you could do it, right? So take that one day at a time approach. Take that one meal at a time approach. There's a reason why we sign off. You know, we can accomplish anything we want. One day at a time, one meal at a time, one set at a time, one rep at a time. Break it up. It is achievable. 2018 can be the last time you ever have to get in shape. Like, wrap your head around that. How crazy is that? The last time you're in this scenario, okay? Do something different. If you've done what you've always done, you're going to get what you always got. You've got to do something different this year when it comes to your fitness and health goals, or your personal growth goals, your career goals, your relationship goals, right? Write them on paper, right? This is what I'll just close real quick. Write your resolution. Let's call it a goal. It's not called resolution because we have that connotation that resolutions fail. Write your goal down. Write what could potentially stop you from reaching that goal. Write the steps that you're going to take to reach that goal. Right, what that goal will make you feel, what the reason behind the goal is, and then give yourself a deadline. And then keep an open log of, this is what's helping me achieve this goal, this is what's not helping me achieve this goal. And that deadline, you can be flexible with it, but you need to put in the effort. So write stuff down, put it where you could see it. Put it where you could see it, put it where you could see it, bathroom mirror, even if it's a note and you have the writing log somewhere else, putting it where you could see it can greatly help, right? I forget off the top of my head, but literally writing a goal down increases the odds that you're going to accomplish it by, 75%? Don't quote me on that, but it's some crazy number. So you need to write these down. You need to have a plan of action. Plan out how are you going to achieve that goal. That means you hire somebody, It means you do research, like listen to this show and then researching what I just said, because you shouldn't just take my word for it. You should do your own research, right? Question what I say, question what other people say. It is possible. So Welcome to 2018, everybody. This is One Rep at a Time Radio, brought to you by OneRepAtATime.net on the Recovery Channel mobile app initially. I hope everybody has a phenomenal year. Wishing you the best blessings, joy, happiness, prosperity, the whole 9 yards. I know I'm super excited for this year. We have a lot of big stuff in the works. If I can only tell you what I just did today, it will blow your mind. So stay tuned for that. I am super grateful that you listen to me. Thank you. Please share this with your friends, people who are thinking about going on diets, people who's doing a diet. A lot of good information. I will see you next week. And yes, that's right. We can accomplish anything we want, one day at a time, one meal at a time, one set at a time, one rep at a time.